Hello, welcome to Free Will, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with George Ortega, Jamie Soden, and Anthony Bishop. And today we're going to talk about common things that people say that reveals they don't truly believe in free will. For example, here's kind of a funny one. Um, it before you judge someone, walk a mile in their shoes. That way, when you judge them, you're a mile away and you have their shoes. That's how I saw it on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I heard that. I saw that
Yeah,
recently.
that's a variation though on the prior one that says before you judge someone, walk a mile in their shoes. And the real meaning of the saying was that basically, if you had had their life, you'd probably be doing the same thing they were doing, which is the entire point of understanding that if you had the same nature and nurture as anyone else, you would be them doing exactly what they were doing at the same time they were doing it.
Or it
Yeah.
could be too hard for them and they could drop dead being in your shoes.
Exactly. We're all different. What works for some of us may not necessarily work for others of us, and we're not in control of that.
and that's the thing about it is that we understand that there are certain things like you feel sympathy when you find out you find out that somebody was bullied, for example. Like let's suppose that you find out that one kid killed another kid, but then you found out that this kid was killing this other kid in self-defense because this guy he killed was bullying him for 3 years and nobody did anything about it, even when the kid was begging for help. And the reason that's on my mind is because Jamie Soder posted a link to a video, something about that happening. But that's the whole point, though, is you have sympathy. You understand that people are pushed to a point where they don't know what to do, and they do something that may not have been the best thing, but it was all they knew to do.
Exactly. It doesn't completely absolve us. We still need our rules and laws to have a civilization and all, but understanding that there are causes and reasons why people do things just makes things so much more civilized, so much more compassionate. So all right, Jamie, when I say, this expression, don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Yeah.
What do you take that to mean?
It means unless you've experienced this situation, you don't really have the moral high ground to judge someone for that circumstance.
Exactly. A lot of times the rich will blame, the poor for their poverty, not understanding that a lot of times if you're rich, well, you probably had rich parents who might have been very well educated, like you learned a lot of things that as a poor person may not necessarily learn. Uh,
Yeah. Go on.
where Anthony, what's your take on this? The expression is like, don't judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Well, I'd probably put an example for it actually. I'd probably, because I've read a bit of the Bible and I've heard this old saying, "Judge thee not unless you are being judged yourself or other people being judged and that." And I think, to be honest, like my mum, she's had a tough time of her whole year in life and stuff, and it's like people like she's looked after my stepbrother, who's not really her own son, but she still brought him up as like her child and stuff because her mum because his mother didn't want him. She threw him out of a bed. Yeah, she was married and she went off with different blokes, and like basically my mum's looked after it. Now people like say the social services said to my mum one day that he didn't look disabled and stuff, and that he was okay and stuff. And she said, well, to be honest, you want to be with us 24/7. Thing is, with social services, they're not with disabled people 24/7, so they don't know what. We never saw her again. And we never saw her again and stuff. So it's like it's basically them being hypocrites, to be honest.
That's a perfect example. Okay. And there's another similar expression, because like we all, we all have our personal travails, like life seems to kind of like, bring us each, suffering in different ways. But a lot of times we understand there's another expression that says, there but for the grace of God go I. Chandler, when you hear that expression, what do you think?
Now that's a mystery, George, because I have no clue what that means.
Okay, all right. Jamie?
Hmm? Yeah, what?
The expression, this is like, I think it may be biblical or religious, I don't know, but it says, there but for the grace of God go I. Have you ever heard that expression?
I haven't heard of that expression, no, but I've heard of the other ones. Judge not, lest ye be judged, and also don't judge someone unless you walk a mile in their shoes. I've heard of those ones.
Okay, Anthony, have you heard of this one? There but for the grace of God go I, or?
No, it's pretty new to me as well because I don't read like Bibles that much. But I suppose it's from a Bible
All
or
right. Yeah, basically this is like, let's say you're walking down the street and you see a homeless person, a beggar or something. Now, a lot of people who believe in free will, would look at that person and would say, look at that, horrible person. They're probably lazy. They're probably, they're just probably bad people to be in that situation, begging and all that. They would look down on them. They would judge them often very harshly. And that judgment comes from ascribing free will to them, from believing that really what they, who they are was up to them. Where this expression, there but for the grace of God go I, is an indication that you understand, wait a minute, like that we're fortunate. In other words, the only reason we're not them is because life, God, reality, however we want to explain it, treated us differently. Didn't gave us certain advantages. Just even our neurochemistry. Some of these people like have very, very serious conditions, schizophrenia and stuff like that. So this expression just basically, and again, like, I guess maybe in the UK it's not as popular, and you're right. I think even here in the United States it's popular mainly perhaps within religious communities, but it very clearly, I think just states that before we judge somebody, um, in terms of like their misfortune and blame it on them, as we often do, that we just it reminds us that like if it's only a matter of luck that we are not in their position.
Yeah, and yeah, that the saying itself doesn't reveal that because of, like, what's the grace of God? I mean, that's what threw me off. But you're basically saying, well, I'm just lucky I wasn't in this person's situation. But it's not their fault that they're in it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And a lot of
I mean,
homeless people have very severe illnesses, but the ones who don't, they still don't. They may not have certain talents that will allow them to have like certain jobs.
but the thing is, if they say had an opportunity to step in their position, I mean, would they want
Yeah.
to or would they not? I mean, it's a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, I wouldn't like to be in their position because it's wrong or morally wrong and stuff to be in their position."
Yeah, Anthony, could you explain that in a bit more detail? You're saying like if a person um, sees somebody who's, let's say, homeless, that they say they wouldn't want to be in that position, but then they believe that they could have done otherwise, or
Yeah, they said they could have been in that position if it wasn't for their fortune and stuff. If fortune has their favor and stuff, pretty much. I mean, some people are born lucky or they've been born into a rich family. Some people are not born into a rich family, but yet still end up being on the sidelines, as I would call it.
exactly. All right. So that, yeah, this expression, it just like it basically brings, to our attention the fact that we didn't create ourselves, we didn't create where we were born, where we were raised, so many conditions that ultimately determine who we are. Let's go to another expression that I think this one is used a lot. Like, let's say we're taking care of like a younger brother, a son or daughter, and they do something that upsets us, and we start to blame them. We start to just like blame them, and then somebody, let's say another parent or sibling or something, will remind us, well, wait a minute, you got to understand, he's doing the best he can, she's doing the best he can. she can. So Anthony, how do you explain that?
Well, I mean, it goes back again as well, like probably to the Victorian times where people were like sidelined again and stuff, people on the streets and stuff, and then like, oh well, they say because they've been sidelined and stuff, they said, and they get a job eventually, and they come off the streets and then get a job. They said, and they're doing the work they can. They said, oh well, we can do we're doing our best. I mean, we can't do 100%. We can only do what we're capable of and stuff.
Exactly. Okay, Chandler.
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of another good example something that people say that reveals that they don't really have a free will. Let's see. He. Let's see. Yeah, because right at the moment I'm unable to
Well,
think of one.
how about another one? We can come back to this, but how about like falling in love? Okay, like because
Oh.
and the reason I bring this up is because like people will say, well, if we don't have a free will, what's the point of anything? Like if things aren't up to us. Now, like so, like this idea of falling in love, who can we truly say that we can decide whether we're going to fall in love with someone or not? I mean, isn't that something that just happens because we're lucky?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we know that people. Well, I mean, seriously, if people could choose who they fall in love with, well, why not fall in love with a squirrel? I mean, I mean, seriously. I mean, you could just fall in or out of love with anything or anyone, whatever. That's what I imagine.
Right. And so like love, falling in love, being in love with something, with someone isn't at all in our control, but don't we value that so profoundly? Isn't that one of like the most wonderful things in life? So basically this is answering the question that people say without a free will, life become meaningless. No, life is full of meaning even though things aren't up to us.
And also, because people don't have a free will, there's some degree of predictability in human behavior, isn't there?
Absolutely. But Jamie, let's go back to the what does it mean when, when somebody says, well, and you might have said it, to people, he's doing the best he can. She's doing the best she can.
Could you repeat that and give me
Yeah.
an example? I didn't understand.
All right. A lot of times for let's say you have a younger brother or sister and they let's say they're working on their math problems and they're not getting it, okay, and you're trying to teach them and you're getting frustrated, right, and you become, and you maybe might, express that frustration at your younger brother and sister, whatever, and then somebody, maybe your brother or sister, an older one, or your parent or something might remind you, Jamie, you got to understand he's doing the best he can, right?
Mhm.
So what would that mean to you?
Well, what it will mean to me is that I'll try to be a bit more patient with people who are trying to achieve certain goals.
Exactly. I mean, the reason we use that expression is we understand that if the person could do better, whether it's in math or at their job or something, they would. We all do the best we can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when I was at school when I first started school, and then I went up in almost to the end of my classes. Like I think it was like 8th grade or 9th grade or something, which was the highest one, and it really really annoyed me because I went to a special school for my learning difficulties and stuff. 'Cause I still have these learning difficulties now because my mum has to look after me. She has to teach me and all this kind of English and maths and stuff, and there's this teacher because it's a special school. They're supposed to like be very slow with you and help you like better and stuff, but to be take your time and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
this teacher, because I wouldn't do my work properly, she ended up throwing the book at me on the table, not at me, but on the table, and she scared the shit out of me. And I'll tell you what, my mum literally had a go at her because of it. And I'll tell you what, it still haunts me this day and stuff. Why she actually did it to me in the first place.
Oh, that's pretty bad, man. But
Mm.
there you go. That's the fundamental blame stuff all over again, isn't it, George? I mean, we can't all be Albert Einstein, can we?
Oh yeah, and you want to know something, Anthony? Basically Chandler has related this. Basically, Chandler's mom, schooled him, right, because he was having trouble, getting along, I guess, with people in school. And the thing is that both you and Chandler understand that free will is impossible. Whereas like here in the United States, half of philosophers, academic philosophers who have PhDs don't understand this. So basically what this says is a lot of times the world is not run by very intelligent people. It's run by people who know how to learn and maybe know how to remember what they've learned and teach what they've learned and then like recall it for tests, but they don't really understand so much what they've learned. So I think this is a bit of an aside, but this question of whether, a person understands that we don't have a free will is a great intelligence test. It tests the strength of one's logic.
Yeah, and there's a difference between remembering and learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you can learn something, it doesn't mean you can actually like remember it again and stuff.
All right. Do you guys have any other expressions? Could I have? It's not necessarily an expression. We used it. I think in a couple of episodes back. It's somehow sometimes our behavior also expresses the fact that we, even though many of us don't admit that we don't have a free will, how we act actually demonstrates that underlying that we really understand that what we do isn't up to us. So, do any of you have another example before I bring this other one up, or?
Yeah, actually, and this is kind of an interesting one. This isn't like a popular saying. However, it is something when people are blaming each other, when people are fighting and they are blaming each other. So in a way, they're attributing free will to people. There's something they say that reveals their lack of free will, and this is a real big joke. Okay. They say, well, if you hadn't done this, well, then I wouldn't have done that. But then that person says, well, if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have done that. And, it just goes on, well, if you hadn't done that. And so what they're saying is that other person caused them to do what they did, and they didn't have a free will to do otherwise than what that person did and that made them angry.
Chandler, that's excellent.
And then technically it goes round in a circle, and then no one wins. It goes back to the bloody middle again.
Yeah, it just goes on forever.
Oh yeah, how many times have we heard, and we've said we've done it ourselves? Because the one thing about this is like it's one thing for us to understand that we don't have a free will. It's another thing to really be able to put it into practice, on a moment-to-moment basis every day. That's something we work on because, like, even like with us, we might say to ourselves, like, well, that person made me angry, and of course not. No, like if that person is making us angry, obviously we don't have free will. All right.
And you closed your Facebook because you couldn't deal with the people who are insulting you, I guess.
No, I closed my Facebook because it was distracting me. I thought that I'd be able to kind of like influence people, because most people use Facebook as a way to connect socially. I was using it kind of like as a way to like wake people up to what we have to do about climate change and about unfairness and about global poverty and free will and stuff. I was using it to advocate for issues, and then it just dawned on me that relative to like other things I could be doing, I wasn't, it wasn't like influencing people enough.
Yeah.
So basically, you were trying to open up the gate to try and get people into the gate, but there was ended up loads of floods instead.
Exactly.
Kind of,
Anthony, actually, what we're doing was basically, with this podcast, with our work, we're leading the world to a fundamentally new consciousness. And in terms of the importance of this, I mean, this guy, this philosopher, American philosopher, John Searle, he said for our world to understand that free will is an illusion would be, I quote, a bigger revolution in our thinking than Einstein or Copernicus or Galileo or Newton or Darwin. So that's how big this is. But the thing is, like, we do our podcast, we try to explain it, but there's another expression is like, sure, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. So in other words, like, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. That was actually a good quote, actually. And there was like that. I used to watch Bruce Lee a lot, and he used to put like basically, if you get a cup of water and you put it into that cup, it's still a cup. It's not water and stuff. But you can put that water into anything. The water's still going to be exactly the same inside that cup. Whether you take that cup out or not, it's still the cup that's still there. Whether it's full or not, but that's a cup is full if you put the water in that.
Okay. All right. So here's this other situation that I wanted to bring up again that shows how we understand not just that we don't have a free will, but we understand the benefits of our understanding this. Because again, the reason we're doing this podcast is because we believe that the world can be much better, much more intelligent, much more compassionate as we overcome this belief. So basically, a lot of times, let's say you have a police officer has a suspect in custody and they're questioning this person and they think the person may have committed a crime. Okay, so you have one police officer who questions the person, and he's like, basically what I'm describing is known as good cop, bad cop. So the first officer just talks to the person without any respect, disrespectfully, tries to, like, you're a horrible person, you're gonna like spend years in prison, just really trying to scare the person, really, you're just acting like a bad cop, like
You mean interrogation?
exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so like now, so like, and this is a strategy again that they use it here in the United States. They probably use it in the UK and throughout the world because I think it works to a certain extent. So like, then you have another person, another police officer who will question the person, and this time the police officer will say, like, I can really understand why you did what you did, because if I was in your shoes, if I was in your situation, I probably would have done the same thing. In other words, this person empathizes with the person, this person tries to like look into the person's mind and see why they did, and just and like, and shows a lot more understanding. So again, this good cop is reflecting the understanding that the person did what they had to do, not of their free will, but because it seemed the right thing to do and it seemed like circumstances warranted it. So how's that sound, guys? It's kind of like another way where, like, people might say that they have free will, but like even our society kind of like acts in a way that they really understand we
Yeah, but
don't.
neuroscience has been showing that free will is impossible. Neuroscience has been showing that causality applies to human consciousness, and it's a fact that people have to get over. And morals and ethics aside, um, you know, there's no
Yeah.
guarantee that interrogation will extract a confession from every criminal.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to mention is that every branch of science refutes free will. I mean, seriously, because, I mean, think about it. Why would there be a field of psychology studying the causes of human behavior if there were no causes, if people had a free will?
I mean, to be honest, I feel I've been watching the news recently actually about that Boston bomber. Is it? I think is he supposed to be like a Muslim or something, from a Muslim thing? And people, he's been saying that he's been doing it for his cause, for the religion and stuff. And to be honest, I've been having a discussion about my mum with that actually, and she reckons that he should be executed because of all these people and that. But then again, I think to myself, to be honest, he shouldn't be executed because he doesn't even know probably what he's actually done in the first place. Seeming we've got like this non like illusion and
Religious
stuff.
believers usually
Yeah.
believe that what they're doing is justified. They believe that their morals are higher than ours.
And I believe as well that his brother influenced him to do these bombings in the first place. So in one way, his brother was like basically telling him to do it. So he's getting
That's
taught by his brother because
Right.
of it.
Well, Anthony, here's the thing with a situation like that, we may believe that the person, needs to be executed, or we may believe that he needs a life sentence. But the reasoning behind that is why we believe that. In other words, like, there may be reason to believe that he needs to be executed because the crime he committed is so heinous that you need to have like a deterrence. You need for other people who might consider doing the same thing, to understand that if they do that, they'd lose their life. So there may be rationale as a deterrence, but where it doesn't make sense is like when a person would want, like, let's say, the death sentence, not because of its a deterrence, but simply out of vengeance or hatred. And that's where the free will belief comes in. So like, we're not saying that we can do without, you know, um, punishment and stuff, but really it's the motivation that this free will belief just encourage us to want to hurt other people, just out of vengeance, because we believe they're evil, as opposed to understanding that, as you understand, Anthony, that this person, like, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, if the world understood that this person couldn't have done any differently because of the way he was raised and his religious beliefs and all,
Yeah,
then
it was
yes.
funny.
And the other thing is, like, consider the crime. Why did he do what he did? Why did he bomb all these people? He believed that these people he was bombing have a free will and are doing evil of their free will. Because if he understood that his quote unquote enemies didn't have a free will, he'd probably have been much, much less likely to have actually committed the crime.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good reason, definitely. I mean, really, I think, to be honest, my whole family's religious, and we're all like in a Christian family type thing. But sometimes I believe that where that God actually doesn't exist. If it's illusion, all our free will's an illusion, and all that kind of bit on there, then that means that God doesn't really exist. So I wonder how we got here in the first place, if it was just a chemical reaction, just exploded, and then we went poof, and then we're here.
Well, the Christian God can't really exist because there's too many contradictions. You know what I mean? First of all, how could God would be just and moral if he wanted the uh, execution of the Babylonians? I mean, in the Bible, in the Noah's Ark story, it said that there was a global flood. He killed most of the people and left just Noah and the animals alive. So.
Mm. Maybe he thought they were good or something. Oh, knowing all the animals, and they didn't deserve all this punishment that he was giving to the other people.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Well, what's
what about
interesting?
the children? That had nothing to do with what God was against. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the fundamental problem is that nobody deserves anything, good or bad, really. So God would have to believe in free will in order to punish people like that.
So
And
basically, I had to balance it.
it's weird because there's no way that, like, if God created everybody, there's no way that anybody could do something God wants unless God created them and programmed them to do what he didn't want, which sounds stupid.
Yeah, Anthony, I understand your concern because I believe in God. I'm a pantheist. A pantheist basically believes that God and the universe are synonymous. In other words, if God is everything and everywhere, well, the universe is everything and everywhere. If
And we're all
God,
connected.
yeah, if God is omnipotent, all powerful, well, the laws of nature are all powerful. But here's the thing, I agree. Like, I can no longer believe that God is all good. And actually, there's one way that we can absolve God. Because, in other words, like, if we human beings do evil, but because we don't have a free will, we can't blame us, then logic might, suggest that we should blame God. But think about this, guys. The reason we don't have a free will is because this chain of cause and effect that behind any of our decisions regresses back to before we were born. So obviously that absolves us. But now consider that chain of cause and effect relative to God, because I don't think God can escape causality. So if there's a cause why God does, let's say, something we would call evil, and then there's a cause to that cause, a cause to that cause, we have to understand this chain of cause and effect goes back eternally. It never stops going back. And I know this transcends logic, but, like, basically it never goes back to a point where we could say that God decided to do this evil. So, like, this is a way that we can absolve even God of the evil that we can't blame ourselves for because we don't have free will.
Yeah, and I refuse to believe that the Big Bang was the beginning of everything because there had to have been something before. I mean, law of conservation means that energy can't be created nor destroyed, so it had to have always existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, I'm like basically the universe always existed. Like there was no such thing as a beginning of all things because what would begin that? And so some people say that an infinite regress is impossible, but I view it as the only possible thing, so I'm kind of weird that way.
No, it
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. Anthony?
Oh, yeah. Carry on, carry on. That's cool.
All right, guys. We're about at the 30-minute mark. Chandler, you want to end the show? Or?
Sure. Well, you've been listening to Free Will, Science, and Religion with Chandler Klebs, George Ortega, Jamie Soden, and Anthony Bishop. It's been an interesting talk about the things people say that reveals they know deep down they don't have a free will. So, bye for now.